Zombie Tech. Welcome to Zombie Tech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Eddie.
He's Whisker.
And who do we have this week?
Today we have... Oh, go ahead.
I'm Willow. Sorry, I don't know the protocol.
No, there is none. There is just fun. We have Willow Brugh, and she is director of everything cool. Well, not literally. Well,
Everything?
Yes. So there's this group called Geeks Without Bounds, right?
Okay.
Which one is super cool. And then, are you still director of Jigsaw Renaissance?
No, but that's
Okay.
actually awesome that it continues to exist and thrive beyond me. That's one of my favorite things.
Cool. So Jigsaw Renaissance is a makerspace.
No, I'm a little confused. Is this like to steer geeks away from the bondage community?
What? I don't get it.
Oh,
There are children who listen to Back to technology, folks. So, Jigsaw Renaissance, I have no idea where that came from. Jigsaw Renaissance is a makerspace in Seattle.
Whisker crashes the show.
Oh, I get it. Geeks Without Bounds. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Nice.
Wah, wah.
So, I was telling you before that essentially none of the folks that we hang out with have heard of Geeks Without Bounds. So I thought it'd be great to get you on and just for you to tell us what it is.
All right, cool. So I'll give you a little bit of background first because all the things that I do kind of seem to be disparate until you get a bird's eye view. So all of this has to do with School Factory, which is about redefining our public education system. And so that has to do with two things, containers and contents for the people out there who code. The containers are hacker, maker, co-working, etc. spaces, artistic spaces, where things happen, and the administrative support for those and making sure that they have their nonprofit status if that's what they're going for, making sure people who care more about what circuits they've thrown than paying their taxes on time. Not because they need to help in order to exist in our current structures. And then also the contents, what happens in those spaces. So hackathons, bar camps, etc. So Geeks Without Bounds is one of the contents. We call them schools for communities, and it's about linking up hacker and maker communities to humanitarian organizations.
Cool.
There's been a recent movement towards crowdsourcing and towards open gov and towards all these really interesting ways to utilize the crowd and technology and enthusiastic geeks to solve some long-standing and really fascinating problems. So that's what Geeks Without Bounds is.
Okay. And
Giving the mobility tools. That's sort of an old word, the mobility. They sort of shortened it to mob at some point. The mob.
Giving the mob tools. So you mentioned some of these long-standing problems. What are some of the problems that you guys are addressing?
Oh, man. Okay, so one of the most prominent things that we... Geeks Without Bounds is what's called a volunteer technology community, VTC.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the world of acronyms. Oh my God. Okay. So
Everybody get out your notepads.
remember to bold the first letter. That way you'll remember. So one of the primary things that volunteer technology communities are starting to address as far as an interesting problem is crisis mapping, which is where people who are on the ground can text in to say, this is where I am, this is what I see.
And how many zombies there are.
And how many zombies there are. Here's how I killed the last one. Or
quick
I
ones
tried
or
this
slow
thing,
ones.
it
Yeah.
didn't work.
Sounds useful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay away from the center of the city, etc.
Right.
There's a debate to have. And And so then you can populate a map based off of these texts after they've been translated, categorized, geolocated, and verified. And then your first responders have a map of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is especially powerful in things like Port-au-Prince, when there weren't really any good maps anyway.
Yeah, the auto map population that was used down there during that situation was amazing. Seriously.
Yeah. And so both the OpenStreetMap is one group that's fantastic, and also Ushahidi. There are many other groups, but so this is one place where this has sort of filled a niche that wasn't really fillable before. You could do satellite imagery, but it was difficult for people on the ground to kind of have their voices heard, and it was a necessary voice.
Mm-hmm.
This gets complicated and interesting in my hackery brain of what are you. Let me think about this for a second. There are humanitarian ideals of neutrality and of not picking sides. But if you're starting to map what's going on, then you are potentially exposing vulnerable populations, or you're letting people know where aggressive populations are, is the nice way to say that.
Sure.
Because, it depends on what side you're on, right? Whether an attacking group is maybe regime-y, or if they are trying to create order in a place that there hasn't been, and it will eventually help things out. And
the tools are getting to the point where they're so easy to use that pretty much anybody can have access to them.
And people don't think about long-term repercussions when they do that.
Yeah, you make something that you have this very powerful tool, and you can use it with a simple little touch screen, and you got everybody in the world has these cell phones in their pockets, and then they die, they wake back up as a zombie, they still remember how to poke their phone. I mean, I've seen Gina Trapani's lizard playing games on her freaking cell phone, okay? So obviously a zombie could do it, and now you got mobile zombies being able to, use geolocation and stuff. It's just a bad idea. There should be zombie controls. I demand legislation for zombie control on these tools.
Even just in addition to your phone lock, your sequence, the first question that pops up is, what do you feel like eating today? Multiple choice. If one of them is brains and that's selected, the phone automatically wipes and shuts down. And
geolocation, if you're in California and there's vegan zombies, there should also be a grains option.
Oh, God. It's true.
Oh, that's awkward.
No, you could ask, what would you like to study today? And if it was sociologist zombies, it would be ingrained.
Oh boy.
But
yes, I have found my people. Sorry. Okay.
That's a very good point, actually. And so that makes me wonder then, have you guys come across those kinds of issues? And more specifically, like I
have a little bit to interject here, actually. I think you always hear about this location-based technology, right? And that location-based and mobile are the things, the new things. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, whatever, buzzwords aside, which is a better use of this ability to automatically populate a map to help people in a disaster, or freaking Foursquare or something? It's like, it just shocks me when I see the general populace using it for Foursquare more than they would use it for, actually useful things.
Right, but here's the thing, is that most people are not. It's draining to be serious all the time. That's why we do zombies, right? Mm-hmm. Because we can think about big problems in a whimsical way. And if you create a tool that is explicitly about disaster, one, people don't want to think about it. Mm-hmm. And that leads to, they're not going to use it on an everyday basis, which means that when disaster actually strikes, one, it's not on their phone, and two, they don't know how to use it. Mm-hmm. And so creating So one of the things that I did in the past is game save that Annie is still keeping up with, and we'll have another round of that soon, of creating games that kind of trigger parts of the brain for disaster response. And it's, if people aren't using it before they need to, you're too late.
Right. Right. Because it's, I mean, how fast does mobilization have to occur during a catastrophe in order for anything effective to be carried out? Like, you only have a however many day window of getting that app to everybody, having that app be used by everybody, and then from there, first responders getting to the scene to, like, I don't know, pull someone out of rubble or something.
Yeah. And that's why I think it was Ushahidi was initially developed to track snowball fights during a blizzard. And it's ended up being used for all these different things. But because people use it on a day-to-day basis, or because it's fun, or because you can create games around it, that, you know, that's why people use Twitter. Twitter is awful as far as security. It's awful. But we use it every day. And so that's what ends up being the tool du jour.
Yeah, and you know, Twitter's a perfect example of this. It's just such a simple thing, and it was designed from the ground up to be exactly, you know, that, a very insecure way to very quickly blast out a tagged, timed, you know, thing out to all the people that actually want to hear it, which is a good little tool to have. Now, as for in terms of developing secure versions of this, I know the hacker community is all over this, but I'm not sure I really see the point of trying to do secure communications networks like this. There's like, looking at it from like, wouldn't it be nice if we could do this? It would be wonderful, yes, to lock it down so that we could have private communications to organize whatever, but I don't think that that's really the problem. I think the problem more lies in the fact that we're interested in having such a tool, and that we should go back and trace down the reason why we feel like we should have that tool and fix that problem, but this isn't a show for that kind of talk, so not really going to go any further in that direction.
So you've brought up a number of challenges, or issues. So one, you know, this could be like, in the event that an application would be used to, say, report violence, like say police brutality, or report, you know, something like that, that both sides could use it. And then you've also mentioned the fact that, or the challenge of having people actually getting involved and using these apps, you know, in terms of the lay population. How does Geeks Without Bounds deal with that? Like, how do you guys start to break down those challenges, I guess?
Of how to get people engaged around these things?
Yeah, and I mean, you've mentioned game save, right? So making a game out of it. But then how do you get, like, humanitarian organizations, for instance, willing to sign on? You know, because they don't want to have to deal with the repercussions.
I mean, historically, a humanitarian organization isn't really known for adopting cutting-edge stuff. They're very careful.
Right. So, as far as getting people to engage, a lot of humanitarian organizations are actually super excited about the potential coming out of hackathons.
Okay.
And the geek community wanting to engage.
Okay.
The organizations that aren't, usually you can find at least one person within the organization that's willing to at least show up in a non-official way, talk to members of your geek community about what the needs are that they see. So, like, there's a guy that comes to our hackathons who's amazing, who comes in an official capacity as part of Crisis Commons, but he's also happens to be a lead emergency manager for King County and the surrounding counties.
Mm-hmm.
And while he mentions that, he's not there in that capacity. So that's his way of walking that line. And through the things that have been built during these events, he's able to take those back to his organization and say, look, this is what was built over a weekend, or look, this is what we expanded upon of what was already built, this sort of thing. And through that, he's now, they're officially starting to ask for things out in the open of these groups. They're thinking about throwing their own hackathons. Like it's a huge sea change just to show that your citizens want to be engaged, right? They want to take part in the structure of their lives. And so if you just allow them a venue through which to do that, they will. As far as long-term efforts and the accountability of, we made you this thing, now who owns it? Like, whose baby is it? That's something that we still struggle with. That's something that all volunteer groups struggle with. And that's, we're taking a couple different approaches right now that I'll tell you when I find one that works.
Sure.
And there are certainly some amazing, amazing long-term volunteers like Brian Rice, who does Open 211, and Ben Acker, who's doing this Arduino-based water purity sensor thing. Like there are amazing, amazing people in this community. But as far as the end point is a tool that just works, right? There's a balance to be had between having an empowered public that can take care of itself, and like open source ideology and who owns this, and we all do, and we all work on it, and we all dabble, versus when shit is on fire. I hope I can curse.
That's fine.
When shit is on fire, you need the fire hydrant to work. There can't be a, hey, wait, does anybody have a wrench? Like, you can't go through that crowdsourcing thing. It just has to do what it's supposed to do. And that's a balance that we're finding. That's a balance we probably won't find for another year and a half. But we're aware of it.
Right.
And so it's kind of like playing with things that we know work in order to create new filters on top of them, or what have you, is where we're at right now.
Right. So then does Geeks Without Bounds focus mainly on like phone apps, or do they do hardware and other forms of software?
My favorite things are hardware, just because to me a hackathon is it's a traditional sense of everybody sitting around with their boards and finally soldering.
Yep.
But most of the things that happen right now are apps competitions. They're mostly phone, they're web portals, they're etc. But I just find it so inspiring in so many ways when you have groups of people working in different formats.
Right.
So there have been hardware challenges. There are software challenges.
Okay. And have any apps come out that humanitarian organizations have actually used?
I don't know.
Well, a lot of that mapping stuff that we were talking about before, I mean, is a very easy example.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. But
That's
not
true.
directly out of Guab yet.
Okay. And that's actually one of the things, because I noticed that you guys helped to set up Random Hacks of Kindness, which is, I guess, these hackathons in different cities around the globe that pretty much just go at it for, is it 24 hours, I think?
Yeah, actually, wait, I have an example for you. Ooh. Okay, so there's one that's basically, it's Android-based, and it just links up your cell phone signal to your GPS. And then when you have a strong signal, it uploads that, so it creates a sort of heat map of signal strength.
Okay.
Because the cell phone towers are not actually accurate in what they say they cover.
Okay, yeah.
You might be surprised to find out. But
not too much of a surprise.
When people are walking around and you're in a refugee camp and you're trying to track where things are at and how well things are working,
right,
it will give you a map of where to go to get to upload your information.
And so that's actually being used.
That is, it just did its alpha during Random Hacks. The two fantastic gentlemen who worked on it, oh God, what were their names? I forget. Anyway, that's okay. They've been continuing working on it with this another amazing person named Dr. Eric Rasmussen, who does work with Instead and Access Agility and
Okay.
all these other humanitarian groups. So
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that one.
That sounds really cool.
One thing that I'd
sounds
really like to see, hardware-wise, come out of that sort of group that you got going there is maybe using some of the new software-defined radio technology to make less expensive cell phone base stations, so you can set up your own ad hoc cell networks and get around any jamming or service terms of service, denial of service stuff. So that all of these apps can still be functional even if the big brother decides to throw the kill switch on you.
Yeah, mesh networks are totally going to be necessary in the zombie apocalypse.
Absolutely.
They're also one of the most fascinating and difficult problems ever because it's not hierarchically structured in its protocol.
Yeah, I've been working on what I'm calling the Zombie Net protocol, which is designed to encapsulate base 256 encoded packets over Morse code using sort of a hexadecimal encoding. And you can do like a 10-meter signal from, say, here in Minnesota over to another one of our friends in, say, Arizona or in San Francisco. And that band is open right now, so we can have a long-distance packet connection in between those two without using any infrastructure that's not existing just here in our place and over there. And, you know, you get enough of those sorts of nodes together and you set up your switching system to emulate the internet layer, and it's slow, but, you know, it works regardless.
That is awesome. I look forward to hearing more about that as it moves along.
You'll just have to get more work done on it then, Whisker. So, in terms of these hackathons, because that's actually kind of how I found Geeks Without Bounds, because I found it through Random Hacks of Kindness. And, you know, how are these organized? Because I know you've done it yourself, actually. How are they organized, and how do you end up getting everybody to be able to focus on, I don't know, X, Y, Z? Like, I don't even know how it would be done. So,
for Random Hacks, you have a bunch of people bring their problem definitions. So we want to be able to track water purity, or we want to be able to track clouds as far as like smoke for fires, or we want to encourage people to report potholes, or we want to whatever, right?
Right.
So you have all
report zombies or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Report zombies. Right. Even just whether or not they're fast zombies. And so you have these people that have brought problem definitions, and they're called subject matter experts, or field experts, or what have you. And so they give a talk, and hopefully people have read through the potential problems and before the hackathon, and then everybody gets together on Saturday morning, and you give everybody a lot of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, okay, so we're going to give 5-minute talks on these different problem definitions. And everybody stands up and kind of talks through what it is they're looking for and what they think it might look like. And then you take maybe an hour and a half for people to break out into groups around those ideas. And so a subject matter expert might have said, I think that this is, we really want it to be on an Android phone. We already have an iPhone version. It plugs into a Sahana backend, like all this other stuff. And then the people who are interested in that and think that they have a skill set that can contribute to it, go and talk to that person.
Okay.
Or they wander around and they talk to a couple different people and see where they'll fit best. And then you have lunch, and then you sit down and start working.
Okay. And
people just kind of figure out what their group workflow is.
Yeah.
And then we do stand-in reports to make sure everybody's on track of what have you created so far, what are some problems that you've already been troubleshooting, etc. And then you do prizes at the end. I usually do prizes to focus people's intent. So we do like bottles of wine to people who did a lot of research first and found a bunch of ways that like we don't even need to build this because it already exists, so we're going to improve on this other thing that already is there.
Right.
Or documentation or like, innovation, to use the phrase, whatever.
Okay.
And it just ends up being a big party, and it's a lot of fun.
Sure.
It's all about the people who show up.
Sure.
Most of hackathons and unconferences is just providing enough of a structure that you can get out of the way.
Gotcha.
It sounds like it's very similar to what we do every day in the chat room.
Yep.
With our little group of hacker
We have
friends.
what we call a online hacker space.
Yay!
Yeah, where we have an issue, we put it out, and then our little think tank just thinks of different things, and we stream what we're doing, and then we go back to the group, say what's going on, what bugs we're coming across, and then they throw out more ideas. And
everybody will usually live stream video of whatever they're working on and throw links back and forth. We'll throw up a voice chat server so everybody can hang out, restream it.
Will you send me information on that so I can join up?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But disclaimer though, most of these guys are like engineers, and it sounds like your parties, everybody has much more like expensive haircuts and Arduinos and like skinny jeans.
No.
Whisker.
Okay, so one of my absolute favorite things about this most recent random hacks was that you had people working on OpenGov stuff. So people who had come from the local government and said, "Look, we have these data sets. We want to open them up." Right alongside an anarchist crew.
Oh boy.
We're going to build this for this thing. And they actually had great conversations. And so
that's good.
The thing that is...
what's really important in your role as like a facilitator is to get people past this whole idea of the other, because this person doesn't look like me. They're less of a human than I am. No. Just because you're an old school engineer wearing a polo shirt, sitting there, on your Sunday afternoon, hacking on something on your bench doesn't mean you're doing anything different than dude with a mohawk, building something with his iPhone. It's the same thing, different tools, different interests, whatever, but you're doing the same thing. And you'll get along if you just take the time to get to know these people.
And so many of the generation that I count myself a part of, I love listening to people who have already figured a lot of this stuff out, because it means that I'm not going to make the same mistakes. I can learn from them. They can help guide me through things that I could never even thought of. And through that mentorship, I can hopefully mentor them in some ways and bring them some new information.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with age or background. It just has to do with a desire to affect and be a part of the world around you.
Right. Now, is there like a central repository for all of these projects where different like hacker spaces and different hackathon groups can come and look and maybe pull and, like give suggestions to and all that?
So Geeks Without Bounds has a repository of the things that we've curated and the things that have happened at the hackathons that we really care about.
Okay.
But that's actually something that UN OSHA, which is a coordination effort of all of these. There has been an order of magnitude increase in humanitarian organizations in the past 5 or 7 years.
Sure. I believe it.
Massive. And so they're working on that. And NASA is also working on something called the Collaboration Project, which is basically like, how do we know what everybody's doing? And UN OSHA is very aware that being modular and having a distributed network of nodes is all we can hope for. Like, it's actually better that way, and it's going to be difficult to try to centralize and keep everything updated, and people just aren't going to do it. And so there are efforts of what are all the projects happening, what are all the organizations, but that's a massive effort.
So it's still being worked on.
Yeah.
Actually, and it really, it kind of sounds like a lot of the challenges, because this is relatively new. You know, a lot of the challenges are starting to get addressed, but they're not solved yet.
I wouldn't say that any of this stuff is new, honestly. It's all same old problems, just a new set of tools to try to solve them, right? It's what we're seeing, what we're basically presiding over in our age group is the changing of the guard. You know, the baby boomers and their set of tools are on the way out, and the kids coming out of the schools are on their way in, and they've got different tools and different ideas on what the right way to solve particular kinds of problems are.
Mhm.
You know, what we call crowdsourcing now, back then they would have just called, you know, a whole bunch of people showing up to work on something. They just didn't have a catchword for it, right?
I suppose.
Yes and no, because the problems are becoming bigger. I mean, we have
Faster, I think.
Yeah, so Eric Rasmussen that I brought up earlier, he studies the spread of disease in disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And so like a mudslide in a slum is devastating, not only because of the deaths that it causes, but also because of the zombies rising up and spreading disease further, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because climate change is massive, that like we can't even begin to address that, and we have these huge population booms, and we have the ability to travel so fast, and that's becoming ubiquitous, and so you can spread disease. Like, we're screwed
Instantaneously, pretty much.
Yeah, if a fat zombie gets on a plane, we're screwed, right? And so
Yep.
and so yes, the problems are the same, but they're bigger and they're faster. But we're also, as a population, we have the ability to address them because we have the connectivity and the awareness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess, and the reason I bring that up is partly because you have these hackathons, which are like amazing, fun party times where people are like just hardcore focused on their projects. But then afterwards, you know, when they're not at the hackathon, these projects kind of sit. You know, I don't know if people end up fostering them, or, you know, you guys are hardcore, you're focused, you're on track, you're progressing, and then as soon as the day ends, as soon as the doors close, it kind of sits there. You know, it like you unless there's like that central repository, for instance, or some sort of repository or forum for people to keep working on it until the next hackathon, there's no progress being made on that app. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so its application, the app's application, is actually kind of hindered, you know, just because of time.
Yeah, so things do tend to lie fallow, and so that's one of the things that we're trying to address. It's not just between hackathons, it's also any area of transition, things fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
So if a local organization comes up with a way of tracking bike accidents, it doesn't end up being published to any other community, even though it's the exact same information coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you can skin it theme it, not skin it. That's awful.
Well, this is a show about zombies, so we'll let it go.
True. I'm going to keep my dark humor in check right now. Okay. So you can theme it differently, but you get my point of it can be used anywhere, but there's no transition into a larger sense of community and a larger sense of connectivity so that you can zoom back down into a micro level again. And so things are dropped between that as well. And it's something where my hope in that is people's deep-seated desire to teach and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they want to share the things that they've created and the things that they've picked up. And so through doing that, the good ideas will propagate.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And of course, we can create technologies to help us do that. But too often I see problems that are human trying to be solved through technology. And really, it's just like, go knock on a neighbor's door. Seriously, just don't build an app to tell you who in your town also has similar interests and blah, 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 blah. Go
Right.
talk to people.
Right.
Really.
That's kind of somewhat what I was trying to poke at earlier when I said that it's a lot of the same old problems that we're trying to solve. It's a lot of them can be solved with old wisdom instead of new technology.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. Now, a lot of this seems so. Disaster happens. You know, fast-moving zombie gets on a plane. The pilot doesn't realize that he's got a plane full of zombies until he touches down in another continent. Right. You know, a call comes to you saying, "Crap, we've got zombies in Europe." You know, does Geeks Without Bounds then mobilize like all of the hackathon or the hacker spaces that it's connected to do something about it?
Right. So there are arbitrary separations that are also kind of useful. So in the same way that if you're in the education space, you either work through K through 8 or 9 through 12 or college.
Mm-hmm.
Because the infrastructure is different. Geeks Without Bounds would potentially hold a hackathon, but we tend to be much more of an incubator for good ideas that come out of hackathons.
Ah, okay.
And so we don't do deployments.
Okay.
We don't put people on the ground because I don't want them turning into zombies.
Mm-hmm.
But there are organizations that do. And so that, yeah. So it would be like maybe we would hold a hackathon for it. It depends on the circumstances and like who all is responding. There's usually a Skype chat or an IRC or whatever. It depends on who starts it first.
Mm-hmm.
To figure out who's doing what where, doing a sort of a population center report of what information is nearby and what airports are nearby, what do we know, what are the news feeds, etc. And then you figure out where to go based on that.
Okay. And so then where would Geeks Without Bounds' role be in all of that?
We would offer up, so if people in those chats or what have you are saying, we need a thing that does this, we could say, we have a thing that does that. Or as things die down, we would take the tools that had been developed in the heat of the moment to make them better for the next zombie outbreak.
Okay.
Because we had figured out what we needed in the moment. And when you're, because honestly, in the middle of a disaster is not the time to build anything new.
Right.
Nobody's going to be using it.
Right.
But we could do the after action report or read the after action report and then see what might be useful in the future.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to figure out the sequence of events. So disaster happens, right? You guys get the report that says we needed these types of things. And say you had half finished apps that did those types of things that you were following, right? Mm-hmm. So then do you do you ask or do you set up more hackathons to do further development on that in preparation, or how?
Yes, and we also have volunteers who just work even not during hackathons.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
I have an extra afternoon right now. I'm going to work on this thing.
Sure.
But hackathons are nice because it's a big work party.
Right. Okay.
So the phases of disaster are, response, recovery, mitigation, and preparedness. So it's a constant cycle.
Right.
And most geek groups, except for Ham Radio, fall within preparedness because all we ever do is create ways for people to deal better with it when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That works.
Cool.
Sounds like an interesting sort of blend of like a sort of a hacker space, but just for a short period of time. So it's almost like a hacker convention, and sort of blended with almost an old school. Oh gosh, what was that organization that Kennedy was all about promoting? Oh man, I wish I could remember. But anyway, back then, there was a lot of the youth got involved in a particular organization where they'd go overseas and help people, and this sort of has that vibe too, where it's a lot of people that are really looking for a way to help, and a lot of them happen to be technically adept people as well. So it's a really interesting combination.
Yes.
Cool. So now a lot of the projects that you guys are following, are those most useful during a disaster, a zombie apocalypse, or do you have like random time frames? So what I mean is like, so say there are apps that like in that refugee camp would show, the greatest amount of cell phone strength, but that would be done at any time. It could have been done before the refugee camp, it could be done during, it could be done after.
Yeah, so this is most of what GWOP does is just an incubator for humanitarian projects of like anything that has the good of humanity at heart, and it's not necessarily on the same structures as business entrepreneurship, but it's more social entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And so I'm totally like, I encourage people to make money on the things that they develop during hackathons. Money is a good indicator of intent. So
yeah, and if you're using the right licenses, there's it's very easy to make it open and make it profitable. Thankfully, a lot of people have done a lot of work to make that a lot easier.
I think I might have been misunderstood. I mean that in the timeline of a disaster, for instance, you have the before portion where apps could have been made to chart out that area. You have the during where, you can have apps that say, where the hardest hit areas are. And then you have the after, which is like a year afterwards, what still needs to be worked on. So is there a certain focus that GWOB has in this timeline of apps that they like to support?
No.
Okay. That's what I was referring to in terms of.
It sounds to me like
timescale.
If something pops up and is useful and interesting, then they take it under their wing and they help it along.
Yeah.
And
That's
if
cool.
it becomes more useful, then it even gets more handed around even more.
Right. I guess, I the reason I asked is because a lot of times when you see on TV like charity organizations, humanitarian organizations, they'll be really loud about getting initial support, and it's that hard-hitting emotional connection to the human psyche that says you want to help, donate now, but then like say 2 years or 3 years after this disaster, where a lot of the effects are still there, if not more severe, you don't really hear them saying you need to donate now. It's more like it's not even talked about, really.
Yeah, so that's kind of that's another important transition period, and a lot of the big structural changes, infrastructure changes that happen of like, you need to open up your data. Esri opens up a lot of their satellite imagery during disaster because it's absolutely necessary that we have it right then. But then that means that they've opened up their data,
right,
in some ways, and that's a really big deal. And so people who bridge the gap between the old guard and the new kind of see the moments that you can further your ideals in a way that can only happen right. You have to know what to ask for. Like I know that it sounds kind of, I don't know, it sounds kind of manipulative to me, but it matters so much in that we know that we want you to open up your data, and we know that this is the moment to ask you. And yes, the 99% of it is right now, this is going to be what saves lives. And the 1% of it is, and I hope you learn that sharing this is nice, right? But
right. You actually have to have a not just an emotional reason for asking these organizations to open their data, for instance.
Right, and it's also that you can only request and build things that are within your experience. And so even asking for a group to open up their data so that you can use it is a big deal. Like, to know that you can ask that.
Right.
And to desire to ask that.
Right. You guys deal with a lot of issues. Like, the logistics, I mean, I don't even know how you handle it all in your head, but just some of the logistics that we've brought up here alone is mind-boggling.
Well, yeah. I mean, it obviously is wearing on her. Right when we were getting ready for the show, I checked her Twitter, and she was evidently trying to do her laundry with shrunken quarters.
Well, we have a quarter shrinker at one of the labs here in town, one of the hackerspaces.
For those who don't know, a shrunken quarter is created when you put, oh God, it's got to be hundreds of millions of joules of power through a very small coil, and it has a quarter inside of that coil, and just the electromagnetic, implosion that happens there is enough to actually make the quarter, the diameter of it smaller and its thickness wider. And it's very, very impressive to see. And evidently, Willow goes around with these in her pocket.
It's also really cool when you do it to a euro, because they're two different kinds of metal. They shrink at a different rate, so it actually pops out of itself.
Oh, my.
It's way rad.
Pictures. Definitely need pictures.
Oh, they took they used the Phantom to do a high-speed capture of it.
Oh, cool.
That's tricky.
Very
yeah.
cool.
Considering how much shrapnel those things throw out when they go.
Yeah. It's kind of terrifying.
So, because of all the logistics and of all, I mean, even if you're talking about like 5 projects that you guys are holding hands with and getting however many hackathons / hackerspaces to work on it, that's still a crap ton of people that you have to keep track of in a manner of speaking. So what can people do to help? Both, I guess, on the hacking side and the documentation side.
Right. So we use a thing called Open Atrium.
Okay.
Which is Drupal based. It's also Sriracha based. If you click the thing at the bottom of their page. Anyway, based on Apache and Drupal and hot sauce.
Nice.
Cock sauce. It's good stuff.
Sriracha. So it's our way of it. It has accountability. It has a blog, so you can talk through ideas before you start taking them to an actionable place. And it has a sort of wiki that's called a notebook that's for documentation. Okay. It's not the best tool out there, but it's based on the open source ideology that we fully endorse and further. It's transparent. I love it. Mm-hmm. So if people want to jump in, they're welcome to do so there and just see what's going on and get going. Apparently we have a GitHub as well, but I don't know where that is right now. I should go delving into the internet.
Sure.
Are GitHubs known to wander off? Is that a new feature?
When you have as many tabs open as I do.
I know the feeling, seriously.
I'm about to just declare bankruptcy on this one and accept that I'm never going to read it all. But yes.
Whisker's afraid of restarting his computer because he's got so many tabs that need to load back up.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's the zombie browser.
It's taken over. It really has.
No. Infected other windows. You can't keep track of what. Oh, God, no.
So, yeah, pretty much everybody that listens to this show, you all have the skills that these guys need.
Yep.
So if you've got the spare time to help them out, that would be great to go check out and see if there's anything that they're up to.
Yep.
Like she was saying, there's local stuff and there's like all the time stuff. So go check them out.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Oh yeah, no problem. And do you personally hack?
So I'm getting into that. All my life, I've been surrounded by people with amazing technical skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm so frustrated at my own ineptitude. And I've always been surrounded by people who were so phenomenal at what they did that I've never had to pick up a tangible skill. My skill set is in facilitation. It's in being an organic chat client and making sure that people know who they should know.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means that I don't know how to do the things that I encourage others to do. So I've started actually only working half time and starting to learn about networks. So I'm excited about this thing, but it's kind of daunting.
Hey, facilitation is an art.
Thank you. It is.
It is. I mean, having to deal and keep all that, keep all of it in your mind and track of it and all that nonsense. It's not everyone can do that.
I'm totally not discounting my skill set. I'm only looking for an additional one.
Sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got the whole facilitating or tumbling really wrapped up, and it sounds like you're starting to improve further in that. It's time to like go learn about some technical details that'll allow you to do it even better, which is a really good place to be at.
Yeah, it is. I'm so lucky in life. I'm so spoiled. It's awesome.
Well, can you believe it's almost an hour already?
Yeah, I need to go rescue my laundry.
So, before you do that, I have a few questions that I usually ask everybody, and then we can let you go. So, first question: what 3 tools would you bring to your zombie apocalypse bunker?
Okay, machete is my weapon of choice.
Excellent.
Because you don't run out of bullets, and you only concentrate on the things that are immediately relevant.
Cool. We should actually, by the way, get you in touch with one of our former guests, Mira Grant, because she has a machete collection, and you remind me a lot of her.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
Mira was telling us that somebody was nice and sent her some pizza at like 9 o'clock at night because she tweeted she was hungry. And poor pizza dude shows up on her doorstep and knocks, and she answers the door in like a freaking, a horror T-shirt from her favorite horror movie and a machete in her hand. And thankfully, he was young enough to appreciate the humor of the situation.
Yep.
Nice.
Awesome chick.
So tool number 1, machete. Okay.
Tool number 2, my flint, etc.
Okay.
And also just a multi-tool, just my Leatherman.
Cool.
Simple and easy to carry when running.
That sounds good. And what type of system would you want set up? What's the first system you would want set up at your zombie apocalypse bunker?
Oh, you mean beyond like shift taking?
Yeah, what's the first piece of infrastructure that you think is the most important to bring back online immediately?
Library.
Your library?
My library. Any library.
Oh.
There is no Google in the zombie apocalypse.
It's true.
That's a good point.
And it's a community space where people are sharing their knowledge. It's based on the ideals of sharing. It references a shared history of something that existed before that most dire moment and the things that you're living through right then. It's an escape. It's a resource.
Cool. That's actually a very philosophically excellent answer.
Yes, it's a very wise answer.
I like it.
Yeah, but then you also have to carry all those books with you. And,
Well, everybody's. Well, actually, now that you mentioned
just
the book,
hunker down in a library.
Because everybody's going to bring at least one book, right?
I know Mira would probably flinch at that idea because there's a lot of hiding spots in the stacks, and you don't.
Okay, so question for you two:
what's up?
Mobile or stationary existence in zombie apocalypse?
We have a lot of like heavy infrastructure tech here, so we're probably very stationary. We're more the place where people would go to.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna get 2 MRI machines.
Nice.
Yeah, one to determine whether someone is a zombie, and one to act as a railgun. So, and we're getting solar technology, solar panels that we're strapping on our friend's back, which is gonna come. And
every single guest that comes on adds a couple pieces to the pile of things that they think we should do here.
Right. Yeah.
So I think a Zeppelin is the best possible mode of transportation.
Very steampunky. I like it.
No, it's I had this idea before. I love my steampunk friends. Don't get me wrong. Like Magpie with Steampunk Magazine and Libby with her photography and Mr. Von Slat with his everything awesome. But a Zeppelin, because it's laid back. You don't have to worry about landing for a long time. You don't have to worry about escape. You just get to hang out in the sky.
That is pretty true. But then, like, what if you get jets and stuff trying to, blow you down?
That's true. I don't know about that.
That might have to be the long-term solution. Once all the jets have used up their fuel or what have you, and then you come up with some sort of solar-powered Zeppelin.
Yes. There we go.
That would work.
I'm liking the idea.
In which case, we might have to beg for a bit of space.
I'm going to have to build a Zeppelin landing pad on the roof here.
Oh, ho, ho. Hey, that's a good idea.
Easier to secure than like an open field.
True.
Sweet.
Awesome. So where can people find more information about all this stuff you're doing?
So as far as Geeks Without Bounds, we are gwob.org, GWOB.org. We're Gwaborg on the Twitters.
Yep.
School Factory is schoolfactory.org and School Factory on Twitter. And I am Willow Blue. It's BL00. I am that everywhere on the internets and in real life.
Cool.
If anyone wants to schedule a one-on-one chat, please tell me what the chat is about. But you can go to tungle.me/Willow Blue. I'm about to be in Germany. Later on, I'm going to be in Portland. I'll be in Chicago in a bit. So if you ever want to meet up in Meat Space, let me know.
Cool.
And for us, you can find this show every Thursday at zombietech.tv. On Twitter, we're at TYMKRS. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.